All right, let's dive into one of the weirdest and most persistent rumors in all of history. It's a claim that has survived world wars, the Cold War, and countless playground rhymes to become something a lot of people just accept as fact. Today, we're getting to the bottom of it. Did Adolf Hitler really have only one testicle?
You know the song, right? Everybody knows the song. It's got to be one of the most famous bits of wartime mockery ever. It's catchy, it's insulting, and boy, did it spread like wildfire. But here's the thing. While pretty much everyone knows the tune, almost nobody knows the real story behind it.
And that's really the big question we're tackling. We're not going to treat this like a joke. We're going to treat it like a genuine historical mystery. We're going to follow the evidence, from the trenches of World War I to Soviet autopsy rooms and dusty prison files, to find out what's actually true. So, to really understand the truth, you first have to understand the myth. Where in the world did this powerful idea come from? And why on earth did it stick around for so long?
You see, what's so fascinating is that this song wasn't just some random schoolyard chant. Oh no, it was a seriously effective piece of Allied propaganda. I mean, think about it. You've got a dictator who builds his entire image on this idea of strength, perfection, and hypermasculinity. So what's the single best way to tear that all down? You turn his anatomy into a punchline. It was a low blow, for sure, but it was absolutely brilliant. And it worked.
But just because it was a great piece of propaganda doesn't make it true. For decades, two really dramatic but really flawed pieces of evidence have kept this myth going. So let's dig into the most famous claims.
Okay, so the first major story takes us all the way back to 1916, to the absolute horror of the Battle of the Somme. The story goes that a young Hitler got hit by shrapnel in the groin and lost a testicle right there in the trenches. It sounds like something straight out of a war movie, right? A dramatic, defining injury. The problem is, when you actually look for proof, this story just completely falls apart. The medic who claimed he treated Hitler, he didn't tell his story until the 1960s, nearly 50 years later. But more importantly, Hitler's official military medical records from the time mention absolutely nothing about a groin injury. They say he was wounded in the thigh. That's it. There is zero contemporary proof of this story. So, the verdict from historians is pretty clear. The whole battlefield story is based on a memory told decades too late, and it flat out contradicts the official paperwork. It's just really, really weak evidence. Now, let's jump forward to the very end of the war, 1945. The Soviets find Hitler's remains, and they claim that their official autopsy confirms he was missing a testicle. And for a lot of people, that sounded like case closed. Yeah, not so fast. This autopsy report is a total house of cards. First of all, the body was burned so badly that it was basically unrecognizable. Second, the journalist who first published these findings later straight up admitted that it was all just propaganda. And the cherry on top, the report's official cause of death contradicts every other piece of historical evidence we have. This wasn't science, it was a political document, plain and simple. So the verdict on the Soviet autopsy is even more blunt. Historians don't just question it, they dismiss it entirely. It's seen for what it was, a piece of Cold War misinformation, not a reliable medical fact. Okay, so if the war story is a myth and the autopsy report is propaganda, where does that leave us? Are we back to square one? Well, not exactly. It brings us to the single most important and, ironically, the least dramatic piece of evidence in this whole mystery. For this, we have to go back in time to 1923. Hitler's just been arrested after a failed coup, and he's sent to Landsberg prison. He's not the Fuhrer yet, he's just another political inmate. And, like every inmate, he has to get a routine medical exam. This is where we find the smoking gun. The official note from the prison doctor, a guy named Josef Brinsteiner, is incredibly specific. It doesn't say anything about a war injury or a missing testicle. It gives a clear diagnosis: right-sided cryptorchidism. So, what on earth does that mean? Well, cryptorchidism is just a medical term for a pretty common condition. It's when a testicle doesn't fully descend from the abdomen during development. And this is the key. It's a congenital condition, something you're born with. It's not caused by shrapnel, it's not a dramatic war wound. It's just a simple and kind of boring developmental issue. And what makes this 1923 document even more rock solid is what happened later. His personal doctors said he became incredibly paranoid and refused to undress for exams. That means this prison doctor's note might be the last and only truly objective medical record we have of him, written long before anyone had a reason to lie about it. So, we've debunked the crazy stories and found the most likely, if less exciting, truth. But you might be wondering, why does any of this matter? What can this absolutely bizarre historical footnote actually teach us?
Well, let's just lay it all out. You've got the World War I injury, which is incredibly weak. You've got the Soviet autopsy, which is just propaganda. And then you have the 1923 prison exam, a clear, contemporary medical document. When you look at it like this, it's not even a close call, is it? So, when you weigh all the credible evidence, the historical conclusion is pretty clear. No, Hitler didn't lose a testicle in the war. He almost certainly had a common congenital condition from birth. So the rumor was based on a tiny kernel of truth, but the entire story built around it was completely wrong. And this is why it really matters. This whole thing is a perfect case study in how propaganda can literally become historical fact in our minds. It shows how a dramatic, exciting story about a war wound can totally bury a quiet, boring, but true medical document. It's a reminder that flashy myths often survive a lot longer than the simple truth. And the doing history is about weighing evidence, not just repeating stories. So, in the end, a piece of wartime mockery became this huge global mystery. And that mystery wasn't solved with a dramatic battlefield confession or some secret file. It was solved by a boring doctor's note from 1923. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? How many other things that we all think we know about history are really just powerful rumors, waiting for one quiet little document to come along and set the record straight?